I'm Martin Stensis, and I'm introducing Sunny Strasburg, marriage and family therapist, and also an artist in her own right. She is a marriage and family therapist specializing in psychedelic medicine and ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. She is a graduate from the California Institute for Integral Studies, program for psychedelic research and therapy. And she is joining us today to talk about the topic of magic as it applies to personal growth, psychedelic medicine, and self-empowerment. Welcome, Sunny. Would you like to add to that?
Thanks, Martin. I'm really happy to be here today. A little bit background about me and what we're going to be talking about today. I am a therapist. I specialize in trauma, treating trauma. I am in private practice. I offer ketamine-assisted psychotherapy in my practice. I've started a nonprofit organization with Dr. Phil Wolfson called Indra's Net Coalition, and we're seeking to support people through the COVID-19 epidemic and all the trauma that surrounds that. I am a certified psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist, certified by CIIS. And I'm trained and certified in EMDR trauma therapy. And I'm really excited to talk about magic and my experience with magic and how I see the magic working in the psychedelic medicine field, how psychedelics and magic come together in theory and experience.
Nice. So if you ask 20 different people what magic is, you're going to get 20 different answers. There's all these different schools of thought and different historical lineages and ways of practicing. What does magic mean to you? How do you use it? What does it look like in your practice?
Yeah, I think that magic is probably one of the most misunderstood spiritualities in the history of humankind. There's been a lot of, I think, straight up propaganda against witchcraft and magic. And so it's important to talk about it. It's important to talk about each of our experiences with magic and relationship with magic. It's very personal. There's no real dogma or religion around magic. Each person comes to it in their own right with their own experience. And that's definitely been my relationship with magic over the years.
What does your practice look like for you, and how did it come about?
I'll give you a little background. Growing up, my Italian grandmother, I spent a lot of time with her, and she was raised Roman Catholic, and a lot of her practice involved praying to different saints. There was a saint of lost objects and a saint of, pets, and when your pet was sick. And so she kind of had this polytheistic view and then combine that with her love of nature and spending time with her, where she was really in touch with the seasons and the phases of the moon. And so that was really my orientation, was around this connection to nature. And magic is really, really connected to nature. You're looking at how you fit within this larger matrix, this larger system. And that's really what I love about it. There's a real love of the feminine. So, we talk a lot in magic often about the masculine and feminine, and the masculine being this sequential way of thinking, logic, goal-directed behavior, kind of this kind of spiritual aspect of ourselves. And all of us have masculine and feminine within us. And I feel like a lot of our Judeo-Christian religions are really oriented around the masculine and denigrate the feminine, really deny the feminine. But in magic practice, we look at the feminine as more of the horizontal plane, the heart, the experiential, the creative, the collaboration, the connection to nature, and the mysterious and darkness and the unknown, and really about receptivity and surrendering. And so what I really love about the practice of magic is that it's a balance of the masculine and feminine. And that was something that I really didn't experience in other spiritualities that I was familiar with growing up. This connection to nature, the looking at everything in a way of cycles instead of a linear sequential birth, life, death kind of way of thinking. And then heaven, it's more of a waxing and waning and cycles and the ebb and flow of nature, and the death and the rebirth and the polyvalent qualities of all the gods and goddesses that are in the magical tradition really appeal to me, because it has more depth and complexity. I don't know if that answers
reminds me
your
a little
question.
bit of there was a thing about tantric sexuality, and basically that, like, reclaiming this idea of, does this please me? And that sense of valuing the direct sensory experience of one's inner life or one's surrounding, that's a much more attuned, much more dynamic, much more personal way of being, rather than this sort of masculine, we're doing this damn program and we're going to just charge through it and, like, keep your helmets on. I mean, is that what you're talking about here? Is a difference in sort of yang versus yin?
Yeah, and and I think it's really important to point out that it's not witchcraft and magic. I think in general doesn't really prioritize feminine over masculine, but yes, there is this embodiment, this appreciation of being in an animal body, in a sentient human body, and what that relationship to nature is about. Really exploring that and being willing to embrace our humanity. That's something that's really beautiful and amazing to me, and totally different from other religious experiences where it felt like we're trying to resist the impulses of the body, the human experience, the kind of animalistic qualities, and really be in this spiritual detached place. This idea of non-attachment, or that this earth is second best, and that heaven is this thing that we're waiting for that's so much better than the earthly experience. And I think that with magic practice and realizing that we're in this huge web of sentience, and that the animals and the plants and the trees are all our brothers and sisters, puts us in the context of this greater Gaian experience, where we're not trying to escape, but we're trying to really live fully and embodied in this experience. And to kind of tie this into the psychedelic part of this talk, I think that's what's really beautiful about how magic blends with psychedelics, because in the psychedelic experience, there is commonly this experience of really appreciating our place in this bigger experience of nature, right? And this really sentient, empathic experience that we often have with psychedelics with nature. And so those things feel really parallel to me.
So how would you bridge the psychedelic experience? Like, it seems like in our culture, we were just sort of coasting on Judeo-Christian fumes, and then all of a sudden the 60s happened, and there was this big U-turn and wake-up call where, people were suddenly aware that we were fouling our own nest, that we were running out of time, that we need to cherish and be real and be factual about and accountable for our presence here, both personally and industrially and in all these other ways of relating. So would you say that there was a divergence of interest in witchcraft and ecology and psychedelics? Is it all related, or is it incidental? What's the relationship there?
I love that question. It's a really interesting one. From a spiritual perspective, you could say that maybe there's no accident that this is all happening, that at a time when our environment was collapsing and there's human overpopulation and, the industrialization of the world, that psychedelics suddenly enter the scene. That, and I want to give a nod to indigenous cultures that have been using psychedelic medicines for centuries. It's not like we just invented. I mean, I think there's this idea, if you read, How to Change Your Mind, it's like, oh, we just invented psychedelics in the 60s. No, these have been being used for a long time, especially in witchcraft traditions. That's a side note. Definitely.
mean, the
But I
reason
think,
why these things weren't even known to Western science was because people knew to keep that under their hats because it would get them killed.
right. So, but I think that there is no accident. I mean, this is my personal belief that the psychedelic revolution happened as well as feminism, as well as racial equality, as well as the resurgence of witchcraft in our culture. I think all of those things came forward as a countervalence to this extreme uh, masculine, hierarchical, oppressive, patriarchal culture. And again, to put it in the context of this beautiful idea of witchcraft and magic, which is everything is balanced, nature seeks balance. And so all of these revolutions happen at the same time. There's this extreme patriarchy and oppression. You've got this beautiful flourishing of psychedelics and witchcraft. And right now, I mean, it's like there's still so much oppression of witches and magic, but we're seeing so much more interest in the last couple of decades, which is really amazing, like feeling like we're all coming out of the closet. I have so much anguish about the genocide and the femicide of witches, for centuries, and it still happens. I mean, you look at someone like Damien Eccles, he was in the South, he was practicing witchcraft, and he was, accused of murdering 3 boys brutally because he practiced magic. That was their evidence, was that he practiced magic, and he was in pretty much solitary confinement for 18 years and then proven innocent from DNA evidence. And public pressure to release him. But it was completely, literally a witch hunt that's happening today in our culture. So I'm not saying that that's not still happening.
A little bit of his interview, and basically the charges against him were basically, well, if you're a practicing occultist / witch, therefore you are a Satanist, therefore you are bloodthirsty and definitely evil. And that seems to be a false equivalency, which is pretty predictably trotted out, but when it doesn't really seem to hold water when you actually talk to people that are actual practicing occultists and witches or dualists or whatever their particular brand is.
Right.
It seems there's even more accountability and even more ethical clarity in that practice. Would you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that there's been this kind of lumping together of pagans and witches and occultists and Satanists, and that's definitely not the case either. I mean, these are all different kind of ways of practicing. And in fact, I would put it out there that if you got 2 witches together, no 2 witches practice the same craft. It's very individualistic, and I think that's kind of the point, is that I think this whole propaganda narrative, and this goes with psychedelics too. I mean, this is what's so beautiful about the marriage between psychedelics and witchcraft, is it's happening with psychedelics too, where anything, it seems like in our culture, anything that wakes you up, makes you autonomous and sovereign, where you are guided by your own heart and your own internal morality and your own psyche. And you do not need to rely on anyone else to connect you with the divine. You don't need to rely on anyone else to tell you what's wrong or right. That there's just this inherent wisdom of the psyche. We talk about this all the time in psychedelics and psychology around psychedelic therapy. There's an inherent healing that wants to come forward within the psyche. And magic follows that same philosophy. We have an internal goodness that wants to shine through. In magic, we say, anything that you wish upon another will come back to you twofold. And so be really aware of how you're casting your spells, because you're going to attract that energy right back to you. It's like a boomerang. And so to your point, I think that I think all this propaganda against it has really, about psychedelics and witchcraft, has been because the power structures want us to participate in living in cubicles, joining the military, paying taxes, participating with this group think that's all about trusting someone other than ourselves to tell us what's right. And this totally shatters that.
Smothering our own direct experience with pills and food and diversions and non-feeling states, dyspoesis, I think it is. It's an anti-poetic, secondhand type of value of experience.
I think that so much of my own magic practice has been in the early stages, deprogramming myself from all of the programming that I've had in my childhood. I mean, it's just everywhere. Even though I wasn't even raised in a specific religion, it just comes down through the generations. You know, the oppression of women, the oppression of witches, the oppression of, you know, free thought. It's so hard to be an independent person in this culture.
Yeah, well, we are very conformist creatures, generally speaking. It's a pretty good survival skill if you're living in a troop of clever apes, but it's also a pretty big pitfall.
Well, and I think that you know, trusting the individual, you know, my will be done, is trusting that I am inherently a simian, a pro-social simian, that I am inherently interested in participating in the betterment of my species and altruism with my family and the people I love, and that is going to naturally emanate from me if I'm given the opportunity to think for myself. I mean, there's just a really deep trust of the wisdom of the psyche with witchcraft and with psychedelics.
And that's a continuum with Carl Jung. You said, well, you went to Pacifica Graduate Institute, which is a Jungian school, and there seems to be sort of a understood assumption within Jungian thinking that psychopathology, if it's allowed to run its sort of poetic symbolic course, will actually lead to wholeness. And that also seems to be an underlying assumption or MO for psychedelic therapy. For example, Stan Grof said something like, you know, well, what about bad trips? And he said, well, the acute experience of the negative emotion is the funeral pyre of that emotion. In other words, if you trust this process and you face the demon and ask it what it's trying to teach you, or you walk into the flames, or you confront the dragon, or whatever the crisis is, if you're willing to learn, you will come out of that more whole and more wise and more kind. And so is that the bridging principle that seems to unite sort of depth psychology with psychedelics and sort of at least a lot of people's practice of witchcraft?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are these perennial themes that are you know, the royal red ribbon between all of those different things: Jungian archetypal psychology and magic and psychedelic therapy, is a trust in the inherent wisdom of the psyche, that you know, we will move toward wholeness when given the opportunity. And you know, a lot of people ask me about how to start a magic practice, and you know, and about that, and you know, what books should I read? And I think that this kind of pulls into the topic of how important it is to have a daily practice, so that you can start to feel that energy of your psyche moving toward health and wholeness, that you actually do have that experience when you're in a daily practice, and that you can track that progress through time. When you just watch your psyche unfold in the magic practice and the meditation of it, you start to really see how beautiful it is, that it will move toward the light.
So let's talk a little bit about your practice of magic personally versus joining with others, because there's some people that like the social aspect and there's some people that like the private aspect.
Yeah, so again, I really want to reinstate, there's no way to do it right or wrong. It's just such a personal journey. But for me, I have a coven of women that we get together for every full moon, and we do all kinds of fun things where we cast spells and we make sauerkraut and we have dance parties and we cast spells and support each other through deaths and births. And it's been a really amazing, beautiful thing to cast magic in a group. Anytime anyone is suffering, we ask everyone to cast a spell for her well-being or his well-being, you know, their family members. So that's amazing. And I really recommend everyone have a group that they practice with, because it's really powerful to do magic in a group setting. But starting your own magic practice, I mean, if you want some books, Witch is a wonderful book by Sally Lister, I believe is her name, to get started. If you're thinking about, I mean, I had always gone through these existential angst periods of time where I was an atheist and thought that we were just making meaning out of nothing, and I would be really you know, in despair about any kind of meaning. And a book that really helped me with that and helped me understand the science of magic and if it's real or not, if it's scientifically proven or not, is a wonderful, wonderful book by Dean Radin called Real Magic, where he has quantifiable evidence about psychic phenomenon and magic spells, and he really does uncover statistically significant results that magic is real. So if you're grappling with that at all, read Dean Radin's book Real Magic. That's a great source. I interviewed Mitch Horowitz for this Infinite Playa project. He's wonderful. His books are wonderful. Damien Eccles' book is really, really incredible. So those are kind of the books to start with. More than anything, though, I recommend that people just start practicing. So what that looks like for me, how I do my daily practice is I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, and then I journal. And I do journaling like I'm casting spells. I'm writing my journal in my journal, thank you for these wonderful blessings. I'm in a real place of gratitude. I'm calling in what I want. And I answer 4 questions every day. This is how I feel. This is who I am today. This is what I give today. And this is what I receive today. Those 4 questions really set the tone for my magic practice. After that, I go to my altar, and you can see my altar behind me. I have an altar that's 4 directions. So in the north, I have something that represents the air. In the east, I have something that represents fire. In the south, I have something that represents water. And in the west, I have something that represents earth. And those 4 elements infuse all of my magic practice. I welcome those elements in. I do tarot every day, and I use that as a way to just almost like a projective test. Like, oh, I drew, you know, the 4 of stones. What does that mean to me? How is that going to influence my day today? So I like to do that. And then I will meditate or do a visualization. And I just listen to really beautiful music, and I just sit for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and use that time to cast my spells. And if you're interested, I can talk a little bit about how to cast spells. You want to know?
I would like that.
Okay.
There was another question I wanted to ask, though, before going there. Oh, it was that early on in your 20s, you were involved with Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, which is a very ancient group of chants. I think maybe even in Sanskrit, or maybe it's some sort of archaic Japanese. But tell me about that and how that sort of set the tone for the practice.
Yeah, it's interesting because I learned that in the 90s, Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, and it's a set of chants that you do that are supposed to really bring things in that you're wanting, right? Like anything that you're wishing for or desiring, it brings it into your reality during this chanting practice. It's so interesting because things like The Secret, the movie The Secret, which is now ridiculed as this new age silliness. It's so funny because witches have basically been doing what The Secret professed worked for thousands of years. This has been in practice for so long that you cast a spell and you embody the energy of whatever you're casting as if it's happening right now, and it will pull it to you. Witches have been doing this forever. So I think it's so funny that like that kind of got, you know, again, like this idea like, oh, this is this new idea that no one has known. I mean, witches have been doing this forever. But Nichiren Daishonin kind of follows that same idea that you're really embodying what you're pulling to you or attracting to you. And I still use chanting. I think chanting is really powerful as part of my practice. And that's the thing that's great about magic, is that you can take bits and pieces from all these different things and put them together, and like, this is your magic practice, you know, what works for you.
Yeah, it
The
seems
other
like
thing
most people are kind of eclectic in their approach. I mean, some people really want some sort of orthodoxy and a disciplined, regimented tradition to go off of, but it seems like a lot of people like to just cobble things together from what appeals to them. And it sounds like you're one of those school.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people that practice witchcraft are like that. And it reminds me of before Descartes kind of had this like split between, you know, science and spirituality, there were the alchemists. And I feel like witches are really like alchemists, you know, where it's this merging of, you know, scientific exploration and then the spiritual aspects. And so, you know, I feel like every day I'm like doing like a little science experiment. Like, let me see if this kind of spell casting works, and I'll see if that attracts that thing to me. It's really a beautiful dynamic process that is really the scientific process. The other thing I like about it that kind of reminds me of science is that you never feel like this is the one way to do things and everything else is wrong. There's constant inquiry, right? There's constant ways that you can grow and expand with witchcraft or magic. I was going to tell you a little bit about the process of casting spells. So the way that I envision it is, and this has been one of the most powerful ways of creating the life I want. I imagine that casting spells is masculine and feminine. And if I can balance the masculine and feminine in my spell crafting, I can bring about whatever I desire. And what that looks like is the masculine is casting the spell. We send out the rocket of what we want. That's the magic wand. That's the masculine energy. I'm putting out into the universe that which I want. In our culture, we are amazing at wanting things. We're so good at the masculine in our culture right now. We're very much in our masculine. We're always wanting more, right? Whether that's materialism or love or whatever. So we're great at that aspect of it. The problem is that we're not very good at the feminine aspect. And the feminine aspect is completely surrendering once you've asked, embodying whatever you're trying to attract to yourself, just like you're a magnet, and being receptive, being surrendering, trusting that the universe, the divine, the gods and goddesses, whatever you believe in, nature, the natural world, trusting that process will hold you and has a benevolence for you and will bring you what you need. And sometimes what you need doesn't show up exactly how you expect it, but the in content, but the deeper process is exactly what you need. Okay, so it becomes like this archetypal relationship. But that's really important to understand, is it's a masculine and feminine process. And to circle back on kind of what we started with this kind of patriarchal, male dominated reality that we're in, we're so cut off from nature. We're so cut off from our spirituality that we don't trust the world around us to take care of us. It's like we have to dominate it and be in charge of it and suppress it and build concrete buildings that we're safe in and have air conditioning, and nature doesn't touch us. And I think what that does is it cuts us off from the feminine aspect of trusting, of walking outside with your bare feet in the earth, feeling the starlight on your skin and saying, I trust that you will bring me what I need, what lessons I need to learn. I'm collaborating with the natural world to manifest this magic in my life. Does
And would you add to that it's also trusting that there are different qualities to time, that, you know, in primordial cultures, there was much more of this seasonality to everything, that this is not the time to go looking for raspberries, and this is not the time to go whatever. And nowadays we've got this sort of plug and play year-round 24/7 attitude that everything's got to be standardized. And that's obviously got ecological ramifications that we're going to run into increasingly in the next several hundred years. But yeah, I mean, I think would you say also, I mean, people that practice magic often are interested in astrology or just what the tarot brings them that day. It's like each day it's a new story, it has a new theme. There are synchronicities to be aware of, and some of those things can be quite auspicious if you just learn to cultivate that kind of questioning and noticing. Is that a fair characterization?
I love that you bring that up. It's perfect. And I think there is this, I mean, this kind of circles back to that, you know, like the ridicule of that movie, The Secret, because I think it was so kind of focused on that masculine energy of controlling everything, getting everything you want. And I think that when you're really practicing powerful magic, there, because you're in the matrix of this larger system that has waxing and waning and stars that are constellated a certain way and different relationships with people doing different things, there's like a time and a place for everything. There's this cyclical nature, and then it's not about overcoming nature, but how can I be in this beautiful flow with what's happening around me? How can I surrender into the source and let it carry me, whatever it's bringing today? Exactly as you said, this isn't the season for raspberries, so don't wish for raspberries. How can I be in sync with the larger system? And there's something really beautiful about that. That's probably like one of the biggest learnings that I've had from magic, is that because I'm very much in my masculine and I'm a very driven person. And something that magic has taught me in some of my meditations has been, Sunny, just settle down, relax. It doesn't all have to be right now. You can allow it to come to you. Allow it to just sit quietly and allow it to come. That's been a beautiful realization for me in my magic practice.
In Kabbalah, there, without going into a lot of technical detail, which it contains a lot of, but kind of on the lower parts of the tree of life, there's the Mercury aspect, which is science, written language, logos, technology. And its counterpart is the Venus principle, Netzach, which is more about desire, the loins, accepting. And so it seems like you've got two different kinds of magic. You've got desire magic and you've got program magic. And our culture is really about program magic in terms of making business plans and building computers and missiles and all this stuff to like make sure that that plan happens. But we've been really remiss in desire magic in terms of, does this please me? What is this all for? What, you know, how do I notice when this thing is coming true? I just wanted to add that because I think that's an important, like you were just saying, you've got this desire magic, but we have an underdeveloped sense of appreciating the receptivity magic.
Yeah, exactly. I want to do a meditation before we conclude, if you're open to that, a visualization, just to kind of, but I really want to talk a little bit about I'm imagining, people listening out there and what is important for me to convey. And I really want to convey to trust yourself, to trust your process, to be receptive to guidance, to invite, if you dare, to invite your guardians and your helpers and your angels and all the beings that are working on your behalf to help you and to guide you. There's so many amazing things to discover out in the universe, and magic is one way, psychedelics is another way, meditation is a way. There's so many ways to open ourselves up to just this fantastic world that's around us, and really trusting yourself, trusting your gut and your heart to direct you. That's something that we don't do enough of. And I just really want to make sure that I convey that. I feel like that's really important.
Is that a lot of times people that are psychedelically naive will say, well, what's magic about it? Like what, people say magic mushrooms or magic, and there is this sense of like, we usually have a certain uh, scale of meaningfulness. And like, let's say you max out at 10, like the most meaningful thing you've ever had in your life was a 10. And you think that that's, or beauty, like just the aesthetic sense of the most beautiful thing I ever saw was this, and I'd give that a 10. And then you come into a psychedelic state of mind and you realize that that dial doesn't stop at 10. It doesn't even stop at 50. And, you know, I think there's a relationship between our sense of value, our sense of beauty, and the numinousness, in terms of like, that's what it really means. The numinous is the valuable and the sacred. And I just wanted to add that because I think for people that don't know why there's a relationship between a sense of magic and the sense that's conveyed in psychedelic states is that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it's that thing about, you know, like I love what you said about, you know, you thought it went maxed out at 10, but it really goes to 50, you know, in the psychedelic experience. And I think that's that mystical space, you know, that's when we have our minds blown open to what's possible. And, you know, I think there's a humility that comes with practicing magic and practicing and in the psychedelic space, that there's so much we don't have much idea about, and there's just this complete surrender to the awesomeness and the literal meaning of that word, how awesome it is to be a witness to the divine. And there's something really beautiful to be let off the hook as a human, that we don't have all the answers and that something much bigger than us has our back. I remember in a specific ayahuasca journey I had, there was just this the only way I can articulate it is, you know, it's so ephemeral, it's so hard to articulate in language, but it was this profound okayness. It's all okay. like that there's just this divine order to things, and I'm just this tiny teeny tiny little leaf on this gigantic beautiful oak tree that is happening all around me, and I'm just one small part, but that small part is everything to me. And there is this dual awareness of both of the, you know, of those things. And there was something really beautiful about participating in that that experience of the divine witnessing itself right through me, through my experience. That, you know, and I think that's really like the really inherent quality of magic that is consistent is, I am the divine. You are the divine. The divine isn't some guy up in the sky that we need another guy to go through to get to. The divine is everything, everywhere, and we are it, and it is us. And there's something really, really beautiful about that realization.
Self-empowering and yet deeply humbling.
Yes, right. Both. Okay, let me lead you on this little visualization then for the rest of our time, and I hope that the
Please.
viewers will join us in this little journey.
Yes.
This is an invocation that I do for all of my clients that are beginning their ketamine journey, and this is really informed by my magic practice. So I'll just take us on this little. It'll be about a 20-minute journey. So I'm going to begin by having you turn inward and begin breathing long, slow, deep breaths. Just start to settle down and turn inward. I really like to encourage you to take long, slow, deep breaths and hold at the top of the breath. And then a long, slow exhale where you can feel the air leaving your nose down to the very bottom of the breath, where you hold again for a moment. And as you begin to settle in and tune inward, I want you to start becoming aware of your thoughts and your feelings. Start to become aware of your mental chatter. And you don't need to change anything. You can just start to bring awareness to that. Start to feel your body sitting or lying down, where your hands are, where your feet are. Notice if there's any tension. And just begin to settle in, turning inward and arriving at this moment right now. So imagine that you're beginning a journey. You're starting this wonderful journey right now. And so the first thing that you do is you begin to call in the totem that protects you from the south. The south is Solucio, water element, the depths. So bring in the totem that will protect you from the south, the water totem. The water is symbolic of our unconscious minds, the depth of our psyche, that which we are not knowing consciously yet. Welcome in this totem. And now I would like you to call in the totem to the east, Casanadio. Archetypally, this is fire. This totem protects you. It is the element of facing your fears, the warrior in you. Bring in a totem that helps you face your fears, that fiery quality of you, libido, eros, fire. And now we welcome in the totem to the north. This totem in archetypal psychology and alchemy is sublimatio, air. This is spirit, that which flies high above and views the landscape below. This is the quality of insight and spirituality. Invite this totem to come in and protect you, the totem of the air. And now we call in the totem to the west, coagulatio in alchemy. This is that which roots us down into the earth, deep roots that keep us grounded, keep us centered, keep us calm. This quality, the earth quality, this totem protects us and helps us learn and bring back something for the village and the next generation. It is generativity and cycles of nature that never end. And so now you find that you are protected by 4 totems in all 4 directions around you, holding space for you. And at this point, we call in the totem above you, Father Sky. This is wisdom and fatherly, masculine advice and direction and support and spiritual awakenings. Call in Father Sky above you. And below you, we call in Mother Earth, she who is connected to the molten core, the magnetic core of the earth, to fire and lava and all the cycles of nature. And she's also the mysterious and the unknown. She is the waxing and waning of the moon and the tides in the ocean and all of our brothers and sisters in the animal and plant realms. She is the seasons. She is nurturing and benevolent and holds you. She is who our body returns to at the end of our lives. And so now you find that you are protected by all 6 directions, a sphere of protection of totems. Invite them to come to you and guide you today. And within the center of it all is a portal within you, a portal of expansion and awareness, that you may enter this portal today with your intention clear in your mind for guidance. Walk through that portal knowing that you are protected and safe. And as you find yourself inside, you find yourself on a forest path, a gorgeous forest path that you walk along. The trail leads deep into the forest, and you find 10 stone steps. And on each step, there's a beautiful number carved on each step. And the first step has step 10. And you step down on step 9, and deeper still on step 8, and 7, 6, down on step 5 and 4, down on step 3, 2, and 1. You are now deep in the forest, and it is more ancient, a primordial forest with bigger trees, older trees, and moss, and animals of all kinds. And you walk along this forest path, and you come upon a meadow that opens up, beautiful grass and wildflowers everywhere. And on one side of the meadow is a creek. You can hear the creek bubbling, rolling along gently. And you enter this meadow as your highest self, that wise part of you that is separate and grounded, that has witnessed everything that has happened in your life, all the ups and downs. And this wise self is curious and open and wondering what you will find there. And standing in the center of the meadow is a part of you that has been trying to get your attention for a long time. A part of you that you may not have been quite aware of, but you could sense its presence. This part of you is your future self, 10 years older than you, waiting for you in the meadow. This is a wise part of you that has achieved all the things that you've wished for. And you can make this anything you want. Anything that doesn't resonate, change it. It's up to you. So you approach this future self with curiosity. And just notice how this future self appears to you. What does this person look like? How do they inhabit their body? What are they wearing? How are they wiser? What have they done to arrive at this beautiful place? Take in all of the magic that's here for you now with this wise part of you 10 years older. And imagine that you can communicate with this part telepathically. It's just direct communication. There's no politeness or awkwardness. It's just easy. This is a part of you. So imagine that you engage with this part and you ask this part for advice. How do I arrive to you? Take in the information that he or she has for you. Ask for advice. What does this part have to tell you? What do you need to know that can help you in this moment now? Really allow yourself to feel what it's like to be in that 10-year ahead person. What does that feel like? And just really look into your own eyes with appreciation, gratitude for the guidance. See if there's anything else that this part has to share with you. A deep bow of appreciation for the guidance, knowing that you'll meet again in 10 years. And with that, you exit the meadow, coming out the way you came, feeling a little more wise, like maybe you have a compass for where you're going. Heading back along the path, entering the forest again, that old ancient forest. You see the trees, the old trees, and you find your steps, the 10 stone steps going from 1 to 10. You see the carving. You step up on 1 and 2, 3 and 4, coming back into this world, into this time. 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. You're now up in the bright forest, and you find your physical body, and you realign with your physical body, and you take a moment now to really feel what's different. How do you feel different? How have you changed? And when you feel ready, just wiggle your toes and your fingers. Take a deep breath, come back into your body, into this time and space. Feeling more alive and more clear, feeling protected. It's at this point that we release your totems, your protectors, and thank them for holding space. I hope you enjoyed that. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and to share a little bit about Magick and psychedelics and this amazing, amazing world and this revolution that we're in right now. Thank you.